Welcome to Films from the Phantom Zone, your podcast about failed and forgotten comic book movies, where we would usually watch a superhero movie and decide if it belongs in the Phantom Zone or not. But Berto, we're doing a review, and what movie are we reviewing?
Morbius.
The long-awaited Sony Pictures Universe of Marvel Characters film.
Did they change the name of their universe?
Yes, it's just SSU now. Oh my God, you're already interrupting.
Sony Spider-Man universe?
A minute and a half in, she's already busting in the door. Yes, so now it's just called the SSU, the Sony's Spider-Man universe.
That's a much better abbreviation.
Well, first of all, they don't need an abbreviation because they shouldn't have their own universe. However, I get it, and it's way better than Spunk, and I'm glad they noticed that.
And at least Spunk wasn't Spunk.
It's very close.
I know.
So yes, long awaited, because this movie was shot in like 2018 or something like that.
I've never seen the trailer.
It was delayed so many times.
Long time ago.
It was delayed multiple times. First, probably because of COVID, like everything else. Then because everything else was delayed. And so you can't just put this movie out when everything else is coming out. And there's still not a lot of people going to theaters. And then just recently it was delayed again.
Kind of suffered from like the New Mutants thing.
Maybe.
That movie got pushed back, I think, a couple years too.
Yeah. So here we are. Starring Jared Leto, directed by Daniel Espinoza.
Do we know him?
He did Life, that pre-Venom movie. That's not related to Venom.
But it totally could have been.
It absolutely could have been. I was like, oh, is this how they're going to set up Venom at the end of this movie? It's going to be like...
See, that would have been actually clever.
It was going to be like Split, where at the end of the movie, it's going to be like, hey, you know how you thought maybe this was in the Unbreakable universe? It is.
And now it's like, oh, hey, this one's actually in the Spunk.
In the Spunk. Now,
the SSU.
Formerly known as Spunk, now SSU. I didn't see Life.
Oh.
Jake Gyllenhaal, Ryan Reynolds.
It's interesting.
Rebecca Ferguson.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
It's an okay alien movie.
The Life. So how our review works is that we're going to talk a little bit about background stuff. We're going to talk about the movie without spoiling it for a little bit, and then we move into spoilers. That's the usual format. I just don't think there's that much to spoil. So this non-spoilers might be short. Maybe the spoilers will be short. I don't know. It's not one of those where there's like a clear-cut distinction.
No, there's no huge... Well, there's, I guess, a big reveal, but it doesn't make sense. We'll talk about it.
What? Oh, the post-credits?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And we were just talking about this off air. A lot of it was already been spoiled online. Like, a lot of people I know have gone out of their way to spoil themselves because they have no interest in watching this movie.
Yeah.
So, whatever. Here we are. Let's just fucking roll with it. Morbius, the Living Vampire, that's his full title, introduced in a Spider-Man comic, The Amazing Spider-Man number 101 in 1970. Oh, shit, I fucked it up.
1971.
71, thank you. I did not read, we talked about this off Where's Mephisto, and I meant to like go and find and read it, and I didn't, but you did.
I actually did, yeah.
Can you briefly explain that comic? Because it's very complicated.
There's a lot going on. It's kind of like in the middle of another storyline that's already going on.
Well, that's the thing about like some of these earlier comics, like this is from the 70s. In order to, you can't just like pick this up and read it and be like, oh, that was interesting. No, it's in the middle of like a huge storyline, which then is entangled with its previous storyline. You have to go back to like Amazing Spider-Man 1, basically.
Yeah. All right. So this comic starts off, you don't even see Morbius for like the first half of the issue, which, you know, it's not a Morbius comic, so that makes sense. It starts off with Peter Parker having 6 arms.
Which that had been an ongoing thing.
It's an ongoing thing. I didn't read that actual storyline though, so jumping into this, I'm like, what the fuck's going on with Peter?
Well, I had seen that before. Like I'm vaguely familiar of the time he tried to like cure himself or something.
Yeah, but it ended up making him more of a spider.
Right. And so he has the normal Spider-Man like outfit, but then there's like extra holes on the side.
And it's just 2 human arms, or no, like 4 human arms on each side just sticking out.
Right.
It's weird. So we start off with that, and basically he's like, oh man, I'm a freak now. So he calls Gwen and basically breaks up with her.
Oh God.
And he calls the Daily Bugle and kind of sort of like quits his job, or the Bugle calls him.
Why can't he needs to just call out sick? I've got extra arms today.
And then so he's like, doing his thing. I think he calls Kurt Connors, who is in Florida right now hanging out.
Isn't he based in Florida, the lizard? Because of alligators?
I think he becomes based in Florida.
Oh, okay.
But like he calls him, and then Kurt Connors is like, oh yeah, Spider-Man did a lot to help me out. So yeah, you can go check out my place at Long Island. And so Spider-Man goes to his place at Long Island.
Wait, so Lizard's not... I thought Lizard was in it.
He is.
Okay. But this is... Is he like cured of the lizard at this point?
Yes and no.
Okay, all right. Good enough.
So then Spider-Man goes to Kurt Connors' house, and then we flash back, and then we see Morbius. He's like on a ship or something, and he kills a bunch of people. Okay. And he throws himself overboard.
Oh, wow.
And he ends up at Long Island. And then he finds a mysterious house, and he goes in there to rest.
Oh, okay.
Guess what house it is?
Is it Lizard's house?
It's Lizard's house.
Wow.
So Spider-Man eventually finds him. It takes him a while, too. I think it takes him like a few days.
This is just a giant coincidence.
Yeah.
I thought he sought out Dr. Kurt Connors for like help.
He wanted a place to stay and a place to like work on fixing himself.
Okay.
And then he finds Morbius. They kind of start to fight. And then Kurt Connors comes in. Morbius is about to kill Spider-Man, and Kurt Connors kind of saves him. And then Kurt Connors is like, oh man, all this excitement, I'm turning into the lizard. And he turns into the lizard, and then there's like the lizard and Morbius fight over who gets to kill Spider-Man.
Oh my god.
And then like
is Spider-Man out for the count or something?
He gets up and he's like, oh man, like should I just let them fight each other, or should I who should I root for? And then we start seeing more flashbacks to like Morbius's origin and stuff. The rest is a little fuzzy. It's a very long, like 2-part issue.
Oh.
And it's very dialogue heavy, but that's the gist of it.
Well, that's the thing about comics from back then. It's very dialogue heavy.
Yep.
It takes forever to read like just one issue.
It really does. But yeah, that's the gist of that issue. That's the first time we see Morbius. He shows up and almost kills Spider-Man.
Okay. Real quick in the chat, I forgot to mention we're live on Twitch, everybody. You can always check us out Monday nights, twitch.tv/filmsfrompz. Anyway, so we have a live chat going on. That's all you need to know. Anyway, Philly in the chat says, I knew Morbius from somewhere. There's an episode from the 90s Spider-Man show that has 6-armed Spider-Man and Morbius.
Yes, that 90s show was actually really good at adapting some like comic book storylines.
They just like put it up on the screen, basically. That's pretty cool. I watched bits of that show, but I didn't watch enough to remember Morbius.
That show was like my childhood.
Or maybe I did. Maybe there's an unlockable memory with Morbius in my brain somewhere.
But yeah, no, Morbius is 100% in that show for a few episodes, I think.
Okay. So he is a science vampire. He's not a real vampire because he's not dead.
Correct.
Right?
He's the living vampire.
He's a living vampire because he turned himself into a vampire. He just happens to coincidentally have all the same attributes as what vampires stereotypically have, right?
Yes.
Even though vampires are a thing in Marvel Comics.
Yeah, because we later, I don't know if you were going to talk about this or not, but like eventually it's sort of retcon that Morbius gives Blade his powers.
Yeah, actually, I thought about bringing it up because he was almost in Blade.
The first
Blade
one.
2.
I think it was the first one.
It was a deleted scene. There's like an actor and everything.
I think it was a deleted scene from the first movie, and then he was completely omitted from the second one due to like legal reasons or something. Like, I think the director was told to not include him.
Like they actually didn't have the rights.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I think maybe Sony had the rights all along.
Maybe
because
it's a Spider-Man character.
It's a Spider-Man thing, and it's one of those where like it might be very complicated because Morbius has ties to multiple characters. And so like when those characters' film rights were, optioned off, it's like, well, then what can we use and what can we not use?
The reason why the rights are so complicated now is because Marvel was so fucking stupid in the past.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's all been recovered except
they basically
for
sold
Spider-Man.
like bundles of characters.
Yeah. But I remember like in some cases it was fine and multiple, like a character could be shared like Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch.
I think there were some stipulations with that though.
They couldn't be mutants.
They could be mutants in the MCU. Yeah.
Right. But like they used the same character in Quicksilver
absolutely
2 times in like back-to-back years or something like that.
It was either the same year or like it was right after.
Yeah. I remember there was a time when like Marvel could use Super Scrolls, but they couldn't use Scrolls, or the other way around because
I think it was Scrolls, but not Super Scrolls, because Super Scroll was a
Fantastic Four villain,
specifically a Fantastic Four villain.
Yeah, so there was a whole list of characters and how exactly they fell.
But like technically, Scrolls I think were introduced in Fantastic Four also.
I don't know. But at one point Marvel could use Scrolls. Anyway, we're off topic.
Well, now they can use them both.
They can use whatever they want now. Again, Disney Marvel have the film rights to every character now except for Spider-Man and his characters, which are on a shared basis with Sony, which is why we're here.
Which upsets me because a lot of the Spider-Man characters are the ones I like.
Yeah, well, here we are.
Here we
watching a Morbius movie. So it's weird because on the one hand, like, Sony wants to make more movies and they have a lot of characters. On the other hand, they are much less significant characters than like Marvel's C tier and D tier because it's a smaller, it's a faction within Marvel.
Yeah,
Spider-Man.
like instead of like a Marvel C tier character, it's like a Spider-Man C tier character,
right,
which will make it like a Marvel, like, I don't know,
D tier, lower that one.
Yeah, whatever lower is.
Right. And it's like, we might be getting a Madam Web movie.
That's weird that they're making a Madam Web movie.
But we can't have another Hulk movie. You know what I mean? Like, the tiers for those two characters don't match up at all.
Well, I would argue that Morbius was a very good Hulk movie.
All right, yeah. That's a good point. Let's get into that. The Blade thing. Yeah, Blade used to be just like he was a normal guy, no superpowers. And he's like British.
Yeah.
And then because the movies made him fucking cool and they made him Wesley Snipes, then the comic like copied the movie and they needed a reason to give him like
vampire powers,
anti-vampire powers, yeah. Right? And they did that by having like Morbius bite him or something, or they had some interaction and Morbius kind of gave him superpowers.
The power to kill vampires, basically.
Right. I'd be super interested in, like, okay, and we'll get to this later, like this movie specifically. I'd be super interested in putting Morbius and Blade together.
Yeah, but unfortunately, well, I mean, the possibility is there, but it's probably not going to happen.
It's probably not, but if Marvel wanted to, if they found a story reason to involve Morbius in their Blade stuff, they should be like, well, let's just use Jared Leto, like... Why?
I think if this movie did better, they would consider it.
Well, I feel like it has nothing to do with the movie. It has more to do with the character. Like, if we can make this character look better, but the ingredients are there. You got Jared Leto. You have a good design. You have a good actor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like you can make it work. But anyway. So that issue you were talking about, it was one of the first issues, either that or the first issue of Spider-Man, that was not written, at least in part, by Stan Lee.
Wow.
So he was busy writing a screenplay for an unproduced science fiction movie.
That's funny.
And he gave the series to his editor, Roy Thomas, and they were talking about maybe doing Dracula, which I think later...
Dracula does eventually come into play.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They just did Dracula in the Marvel Universe eventually anyway. But Stan wanted a costume villain, something more kind of traditional, and so that's where they came up with Morbius.
Okay. He's actually sort of an interesting character, too. He's very complicated.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I didn't read any issues, but what I read online is that he goes kind of from going an anti-hero to like a villain sometimes to just like a vigilante. So
yeah, and like he does have like a morality about him, though. Like, he does not want to be a vampire. He doesn't want to like suck people's blood. Like, he feels bad about it.
Right, because he has a bloodlust and he doesn't want to do that.
Yeah, and also he's a doctor, and doctors they take an oath to not hurt people.
Yeah, I was about to say the Hippocratic Oath. Yeah. Like, they have to do whatever they can to not hurt people and save lives. And the last background I want to talk about is this common misconception that we even mentioned incorrectly, that Morbius was not created as a workaround the Comics Code Authority, like in spite of the Comics Code Authority. Uh-huh. He was created immediately after the Comics Code Authority was lifted.
Oh, shit.
So it was a direct answer to like, oh, we can use vampires now. Because the Comics Code Authority specifically said no vampires.
Which is odd.
Right. Like, no scary creatures. I think because, it's got connections to like
Mephisto.
Evil stuff and like the occult and and that was one of the things that they were trying to avoid. So I think that's why they were in between, do we do Dracula now or do we do a different vampire?
it should also be noted that Morbius does at some points team up with not only one Ghost Rider, but two Ghost Riders.
I was hoping we'd get through this whole episode without you.
He directly works with them, so
What are the two Ghost Riders?
Danny Ketch and Johnny Blaze.
Oh, there you go.
They actually seek him out to join their team.
To join the Ghost Riders.
They're not called I think they end up calling themselves the Midnight Suns.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Philly says in the 90s TV show, Morbius had what looked like suction cups on his hands to drink the blood.
Probably because they weren't allowed to show him biting people.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Because I think in that show they weren't even allowed to show like Spider-Man punching anyone.
No way.
Yeah, I don't think he ever punches anyone.
He just webs everyone up.
He might kick.
That's okay. No punching. Okay, so let's talk about the movie without spoiling it. First and foremost, I have a PSA, and it's don't talk in movie theaters.
Oh, yeah.
Because I feel like every movie I've seen recently, there's a man sitting behind me one row and over 3 seats. It's in the same exact spot. And he just won't fucking shut up.
Yeah.
And look, I get going to a movie that you think is bad and you think you're going to have a lot of fun making fun of this bad movie with your friends. But that doesn't give you the right to just like
be loud
and like heckle the film like there aren't other people there.
Yeah, like believe it or not, some people want to like sit down and watch the movie.
Well, that's the thing is like
you're in a public setting.
Like I didn't want to go see this movie. My expectations were rock bottom. However, we decided we were doing this, and so I'm like, I have to go see this now.
Right.
You know, I'm not in the same frame of mind of this man, and you shouldn't assume other people are. And even if I were, I might not find the same things he thinks are funny.
25 years earlier.
That wasn't a funny part of the fucking movie. It's like the second scene in the movie. I know this is doing no spoilers, but like, who cares? It's the second scene in the movie. It does a flashback. Very common in movies. And there's a thing that says, Greece, 25 years ago. And this man lost his goddamn mind. He thought it was so funny.
I don't get it.
We've all turned around like, what do you do? What? What's funny? Oh my God. It annoys me to no end. Because if you want to watch a movie and talk during it with your friends and have a good time, there's a time and place for that, and that's in your own fucking home. It's not in the theater.
No.
It makes me so angry. I rage about this. I get angrier when someone's talking in a movie than like if I get cut off on the screen. Like I don't get road rage. I mean, I get a little bit of road rage.
Movie rage.
I get theater rage hard. Like it's the only time I have the confidence to be like, hey, excuse me, stop. Like stop talking. But anyway, I wanted to get that off my chest because that segues to our next point. I didn't think this movie was all that bad. It wasn't bad enough to be funny.
No, it wasn't.
It's not one of those.
I was hoping it would be.
I thought we were like going to go straight into like so bad it's good or so bad it's funny territory. Yeah. It's not like at all.
It's just like it's a regular movie. Like there's nothing like super bad about any of this. Granted, yeah, it could have been a shit ton better, but like,
yeah,
I've seen worse movies recently.
Look, if you're gonna turn us off right now, the movie's fine. There, like that's it.
It's fine.
Like I can keep on going, but like at the end of the day, it's not great. Certainly not horrible. It's somewhere in between. It's perfectly serviceable. It's just not anything interesting.
Perfectly mid movie.
It's a perfectly movie. That's what it is.
Yeah. Like, I think the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is pretty accurate. It's sitting just like 70.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
So right now, I think it has like an 18% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, went up a percentage?
Might be 16. Hold on.
Oh, it went down a percentage.
Let's speak out of turn. Rotten Tomatoes, Morbius is at 16%. Went down one.
It went down one. Wow.
Went down. Audience score 70 though.
Yeah, okay. It seems like the audience is like totally fine with this. What's blowing my mind is that critics are saying this is worse than Venom and Venom 2.
Absolutely not. That's the thing.
I think this movie was better in both of those movies.
I completely agree. There's nothing, and that's the thing. I kept on waiting for something glaring in this movie. Something to really just kind of break the whole film and for me to be like, no, this doesn't work at all. And it never came.
The worst thing I can say is like the editing's very choppy.
Yes, and I want to get to that. We left the theater, and I'm like, that movie was perfectly fine. I had fun with it. And then That was a couple days ago, right? That was on Thursday.
I came out of the theater, I was like, I kind of liked it.
Yeah, right, same. And today's Monday, and I thought, oh, I'm going to talk about Morbius. I've got all my thoughts figured out, and then I realized I have no thoughts because I don't remember any of the movie.
Really?
I pretty much forgot most of it, and that doesn't...
That's not a good thing.
That doesn't bode very well, right? So I had to read the synopsis, and I'm like, oh yeah, that happened.
The movie moves at a very quick pace.
It's
like
short.
It's like breakneck.
It's not as short as Venom 2.
No, it's not. Or Venom 1.
I think it's just slightly longer. It's like 5 to 10 minutes long.
Here's the thing. It feels really short, but it still feels a lot longer than Venom 1 because Venom 1, something with the way that movie was put together is not right. It's like we get introduced to the character and then we're at the final battle.
Yeah, it is very 2-act.
Which is weird. It feels like a
weird,
TV episode. It doesn't feel like a movie.
Yeah. And here's the thing about Rotten Tomatoes, and I feel like the need to kind of remind everybody this. Rotten Tomatoes is not like a score based on like how good the movie is. It is a percentage of critics who gave it a positive review.
Yeah.
Based on a 1 or a 0, a positive or a negative. That's it. So if a movie is fine, like let's say you would watch this movie and you'd be like, I'd give it a 6 out of 10. Like, it's good, but it's not great. You know, it's right on the fence, and every single reviewer goes, it's on the fence, but I'm going to give it a negative review. Then that movie gets a 0% Rotten Tomatoes. It doesn't mean it's dog shit horrible. It just means it universally got negative reviews.
Yeah.
Same thing happens on the flip side, where a movie can have overwhelmingly positive reviews, but it also wasn't that special. It's just everyone's like, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Here's a positive review. So if more people say that, then it can have 100% Rotten Tomatoes despite it being bad or not that great.
Yeah, there's been a few movies that like scored very high on Rotten Tomatoes. I was like, I thought this movie was really bad, like Joker.
Yeah, yeah.
Joker being probably the biggest example of that for me, at least. I
think people, and you can give a positive or a negative review based on however you want. You are the reviewer, but you have to understand that score is an extreme oversimplification of a million different things. It's hundreds of different critics' opinions. And their opinions are more complex than just, is this a positive or a negative?
Right. And another thing to keep in mind is film critics look for very specific things when they watch movies.
Yeah.
A lot of comic book movies aren't critic friendly, if that makes sense.
Well, I feel like a lot of critics go in with, first of all, their mind half set already. Like, they have a very high expectation of what a movie should look like. So, like, when they go into a movie like this, they're like, okay, I'm not expecting it to blow me away in this sense, but I expect it to at least remind me why it should exist in an ocean of other superhero movies.
Right.
You know, and because it was just very bland, I think a lot of people were like, this doesn't stick out. This is very bland. It's very by the numbers. Negative review. And that's perfectly fair because if I was a reviewer, I would say the same exact thing. But if I were to give this movie a score, it would not be a 16 out of 100.
No, that's far, far too low.
Because, again, they're very different things. Whereas we're about to talk about our next episode, we're also recording today, by the way. We're going to talk about the movie Oblivion, which I think is a fairly good movie that got like a 50-something% Rotten Tomatoes because the kind of movie that it is, critics went in expecting something slightly different. When the movie tries to be more thought-provoking, if it's not smart enough, then the critics are going to be like, well, you tried something and you failed it. You shouldn't have tried it. But if the movie didn't try that and was simpler in tone and complexity, then they would have been like, you nailed it. And given it a positive review for doing less. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And another thing is a lot of people complain about the MCU movies sticking to a formula. I think the reason why a lot of them do that is because they found a formula that critics like.
I don't know if it's that reactive, but you could be onto something.
I mean, every MCU movie that tried to stray from that a little bit kind of ended up getting like negative reviews. Look at like Eternals. Look at
Eternals is one of those where I'm like, I think they try to go too dramatic, which I was fine with, but critics were like, oh, you want to try this other kind of movie? You're not there yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if you're going to put up, like Eternals up with like Oscar-nominated dramas, it might not be
No,
there.
it won't stand up to those, but
that
it also doesn't have to.
No, of course not. But that I feel like a lot of times that is the perspective that a lot of these critics have. You know, Like that's the lens they're looking through.
And another issue is a lot of people just parrot what the critics are saying without putting any thought behind it.
Oh, I have a friend who every time we talk about movies, he goes straight into Rotten Tomatoes and tells me why I'm wrong. And I'm like, dude, make up your own mind. You need to go and ignore
form your own opinion.
Form your own opinion, completely unbiased to what anyone else has said. Because again, just because that movie is 50% Rotten Tomatoes doesn't mean it's a 5 out of 10. It means half the people were like, I like this, and the other half of people were like, I don't like this. But
it's not even necessarily I hate this. It's just I don't like it.
It's a negative review. That's all that is. Yeah. So I've even seen reviews where they praise the movie a lot, and they're like, yeah, but it's gonna be a negative for me. And I'm like, then what?
Then what's with
how
all the
are
praise?
You forming your fucking reviews then?
And stuff like that sucks because it can skew the numbers.
That's exactly it. Like there are so many. Like if a movie has 100%, look, it's probably really good. If a movie has under 20%, it's probably bad. Anything in between could be anywhere, depending on how the majority of the critics saw it to be.
Yeah.
You know? So anyway.
And like back to like the parroting thing, I'm seeing a lot of people just, first off, I saw a bunch of people shitting on this movie before it was even out. Like before even the preview showings were out. People were like, oh yeah, Morbius, it sucks.
I thought the trailer was god awful. So that might have been me too.
Well, good news is 90% of the trailer's not even in the movie. So.
There you go.
But all the people I see saying that this movie is bad aren't giving any reasons why it's bad. Like they're just saying that movie was horrible. Don't watch it. And that's it.
Okay. I'm glad you mentioned that because on Rotten Tomatoes, I was just there just now and I looked at the critics' consensus, which is, I mean, I'm sure everyone has been to Rotten Tomatoes, but basically like Rotten Tomatoes themselves will basically summarize what all the critics are saying as their critics' consensus.
Does somebody just type that, or is that like AI generated?
No. There's a person doing this.
Okay.
And they said, cursed with uninspiring effects, rote performances, and a borderline nonsensical story, this dreary mess is a vain attempt to make Morbius happen. So,
I thought the effects were fine.
That's the thing. I don't agree with any of this. I think the movie's fine. It's not special in any way.
No.
But I disagree with this almost on everything because I think the effects were good.
I think they pointed out all the wrong things that were wrong with it.
Exactly. The performances were good too. I'm like, oh, these actors are giving it all. They're all like.
Even Tyrese Gibson.
Even, him and El Madrigal. They went in there and they did something. They tried.
Apparently he had a bunch of scenes cut.
I'd believe that. Look, I think you can make a claim for a nonsensical edit, but the story itself being nonsense, I don't see that at all. And I'm the one.
No, the story.
Nonsense is my favorite word.
The story makes sense.
It does. Nonsense is my favorite word. Listen to any of these reviews, any of our podcasts. If something is nonsense, I'll call it out.
If you want a nonsense story, let me tell you about Venom. Let there be carnage. That's nonsense.
I'll give them dreary and attempt to make Morbius happen. The rest is I'm like, look, I don't think any of that's true. So it is, like you said, like, and that is the consensus of what a lot of people say, but it does feel like a parroting.
Yeah.
Like people are just kind of saying the things that they hear without doing it themselves.
Right.
So, okay, so we talked about a lot of things in generalities. What do you think about Jared Leto?
As a person?
No.
Okay.
In this film.
I think he was fine in this film, honestly. I think his performance was, dare I say, good.
Same. He's a good actor. Look,
he's a good. You can not like the guy all you want, but when people say he's a bad actor, I think that's just objectively false.
Yeah.
He's good at his job.
He's a
piece of shit, but he's good at his job.
It's so easy to pick apart a movie you think is bad and just say everything in it is bad. You know, and we've talked about this. A movie is more than the sum of its parts. And it reminds me of like a situation like George Clooney in Batman and Robin. Mm-hmm. Well, George Clooney did fine in that movie. And the reason is because he's a good actor. He just can't give a bad performance. It's just not in him.
Even if he tried.
Even in something he doesn't care about, he's still going to deliver the lines very, very well. So Jared Leto's a good actor. And the reason his Joker isn't good is because that movie is cut up to shreds. Like
this movie's cut up to shreds too.
Exactly. And that's an interesting kind of little comparison where I think the script is well, we're talking about Jared Leto. I'm surprised he did this coming from his last experience being with like a superhero movie being the Suicide Squad, sorry. Well, where he played Joker, and everyone hated him in it.
Right.
And he came out and pretty much complained about it because he had filmed so much more stuff that the movie chose not to use. And then when he watched that movie, even the slightly longer cut, it's very chopped up. Like every time you see the Joker,
it's like it's in the middle of a scene already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's weird.
It's out of context. It's
exactly. And so that's not a real fair interpretation of his performance, is it, when you don't even see it all?
No, if you want to see him actually performing, watch the last scene in the Snyder Cut.
Exactly. Because at least there, you know, he's got a whole monologue.
Yeah.
And the camera barely breaks from him. You know that they're not cutting in and out of his performance.
No, he's doing this whole thing.
He goes out and he does the whole thing, and you can say whatever you will about that scene or that the script there. He is giving it his all.
And he went back to film that.
Exactly. Like, there's part of him that said, I want a second shot at this to prove to people I can do it. So I was already kind of surprised that he would do this movie because I don't know what these actors know or don't know about the source material and like comic book stuff like we do because we're nerds.
Well, I think a lot of them don't know until they get the role and then they like research it or until they're offered the role.
Yeah. I think a lot of them just see like, superhero. Oh, okay.
They probably saw Marvel and like,
yeah,
yes.
I hear that's fun. There's money involved. There's repeat business. Like, I'd be stupid not to do it, and they do. But so, like, because I'm gonna segue into the story here. For me to believe that Jared Leto like signed up for this, I think the script was much better than what we saw on screen.
Well, I read something that originally they approached Leto and he didn't accept until like the script was to his liking.
Yep, I believe that.
I believe that too.
100%. And I don't think that script that was to his liking ended up on screen.
Or maybe it was filmed and it just got cut away.
There's a saying that a movie is written 3 times. When it's written, when it's shot, and when it's edited.
Yep.
Right?
Oh, things change on the fly all the time.
Uh-huh. And this is one of those situations where I think the script was different than what was done on the day, which is different than what we saw on screen.
Absolutely.
Like, you get that feeling pretty good. And again, for me to believe that he wanted to sign up for this, I think the script might have been really good.
Especially after Suicide Squad.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think the edit of this movie is probably what hurts it the most. There were times also when, like, there's 2 characters talking, and they're on different sides of the room. And the camera cuts to one character, and then it cuts back to the other character, and suddenly he's in a different part of the room.
Like he teleported.
Exactly. And I'm like, they cut something out here. There was a shot where he was walking from point A to point B, and they're like...
And probably talking while he did it.
Right. And they were like, we don't need that, cut it. And someone's like, won't they notice that he's in another part of the room? And someone's like, no, do it anyway.
We always notice that.
I noticed, okay?
And the editing is very poor in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the fact that it's that noticeable that there's chunks of the movie missing, that's a problem.
Yeah. There's a lot in this movie where, so I'd see it and I'd go, because I'm being overly critical while I'm watching it. And I'm like, this would have been really good had they done it completely differently. You know?
So you said it earlier. It's like, it has the bones of like something really good.
Yeah, it really does. But it's not. Just for an example, there's a scene where there's 2 characters on a boat. They're talking inside the boat, right? And then it's Morbius and this girl. And the very next scene is them 2 talking outside of the boat. Or no, this was a building. Doesn't matter. None of it matters. Anyway, and I'm just like, why were those 2 different scenes? Like, they didn't have to be 2 different scenes. And that signals to me that it's a weird edit where they started in one place, they filmed a bunch of stuff, then they filmed all this somewhere else, and they're like, well, we're going to cut all this stuff in the middle, just put these 2 things back to back. Because nobody would write that scene to half take place in one setting and then half take place in another setting without another scene in between it.
So something was just straight up cut out.
Just cut out. Just completely cut away. Yeah. There's a bunch of other ones, too, where I'm just like...
Yeah. That's my biggest issue with this movie is the editing and the post-credit scene. And those are the only 2 things I have like real complaints about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, there's some corny dialogue lines, I guess, but...
I think the other thing I want to kind of compare this to is the Batman, because of the 2 Batman movies coming out at the same time. And we reviewed Batman. It was a whole thing. And you liked it more than I did. I saw it kind of unfavorably. But The Batman, though, as a movie, as a production, it really fires on all cylinders. Like the writing, the direction, the editing, the cinematography, the acting.
Oh yeah, people put their heart and soul into this, and it shows. And it does show.
It shows, and it has a very unified vision. Matt Reeves was given unlimited power, full control, and that's kind of how movies should be made. Like they're called directors for a reason.
Yeah,
it is collaborative, but it's the director's vision that kind of ties it all together, right? However, I thought that movie was a little bit hollow in parts. I think it was overly executed. Like, it looks very good and it sounds good and it's a lot of fun for a lot of people. But like for me, like the story felt not all there, right? I think this movie is the exact opposite of that. I think this movie started with something good. I think the script looks like the bones were there, right? But like it does not do any of that. There's no harmony here. It feels like there's 10 people in a room arguing about what this movie should be. And the director's just
it's Sony, so probably.
That's what I'm saying. It feels like the editor, the producers, the studio's all involved. They're all pulling it in different directions. And the final product is this jumbled mess, right?
Right. But, and the crazy thing is, and I kind of feel this way about Amazing Spider-Man 2 specifically also, is that in spite of all of this, like clearly, like this little war going on behind the scenes, a perfectly watchable movie was still somehow made.
I had more problems with Amazing Spider-Man 2 than you did.
No, but it was perfectly watchable though.
And maybe that's
I don't think it wasn't
the director making as much as he can out of a pile of shit. You know
trying
what I mean?
to like hold his vision together. Yeah,
hold
probably
something together.
Probably.
Do you want to move on to spoilers, because I don't see the difference, honestly.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like if we move on to spoilers, we could talk a little bit more freely.
Yeah, this is just, there's not that much to spoil other than the post-credits, and again, that was already online. This isn't one of those movies, so it doesn't really make a difference to me.
Yeah. All right, spoilers now.
For this movie that doesn't really have too many spoilers.
Right. Something that I was actually kind of impressed with this movie, like as much as it seems like Sony doesn't give a shit about their characters, this one had a lot of like comic accurate stuff to it.
Well, yeah, when you were describing that first issue, I was like, oh, that's this movie.
Yeah, and like everything from like, he grew up in Greece, his blood condition. In the comics, he actually does win a Nobel Prize also. Like he's a Nobel Prize winning scientist. Like all of that is like spot on.
In this, he turns it down.
They probably did that to make him like more likable. I don't know if that makes you likable though. Because they were like, oh yeah, he just cares about his patients so much that he didn't have time to accept the prize.
Yeah.
And like his powers.
Well, that was dumb because he showed up. He was there.
I know.
So why does he do it publicly?
I don't know.
He should have just not shown up.
It was just a weird move.
Yeah, that was weird.
But like his powers are pretty comic accurate too. Like the gliding on the wind thing, that's straight out of the comics.
I'm confused about when is he Morbius and when is he not? Can he do it? Can he control it?
From the little bit of I've read in the comics, he has trouble controlling it.
Okay.
And it seems like the movie kind of did that too, where he just has trouble controlling it. Like in the movie, he was just feeding off of the artificial blood to try and control it. That's why I said earlier, like this might be one of the best like live action Hulk movies ever.
Well, after you mentioned that, I was thinking about it. I'm like, well, first of all, you might be onto something. But second of all, it's less clear cut than the Hulk. The Hulk is like he's Banner and then he's the Hulk.
Right.
And it's really like a bigger transition.
This is more of like just like an instinct kind of taking over. Like he just has to feed.
Yeah, this is more fluid too. He jumps in and out of it a lot more.
Yeah. Which makes it a little bit more exciting than just like, oh, hope Banner doesn't get mad.
I mean, yeah.
But yeah, there was a lot. Even all the stuff on the boat where he kills everybody and then throws himself off the boat. I'm like, that's
in the comic book. You were describing the movie, and I'm like, when you were describing the comic. So
yeah, so I'm like, it's weird how much care they actually put into this character.
Is that care, or is it just like, let's just do this?
Somebody that was working on this movie gave a shit. Somebody did.
It's weird, yeah. And, a lot of people say that this is like, oh, it feels like an early 2000s movie. And I would have said that about, what did I say that about recently? Venom, sure, yes.
Venom feels like one of those movies in a bad way.
That much. I didn't think that this did that. I think this broke those stereotypes in some ways, that formula in some ways.
Yeah.
Even though I get the comparison. Mm-hmm. But I would have liked to have seen more of Morbius and less of
Milo,
Jared Leto.
Oh.
I mean, like we see his face sometimes, but like he doesn't really like stay as Morbius for very long. I mean, his name is Morbius. I'm saying he doesn't stay in vampire mode.
Oh, yeah. Which, I mean, the whole movie is just him trying to not be a vampire, which is his whole character.
Sure, but I'm saying we got a lot of screen time of him not being a vampire.
That's true.
I think I would have liked a little bit more.
A little bit more. Yeah.
Just like straight up being the vampire.
Yeah, and then like Tyrese Gibson's character and
Al Madrigal.
Yeah. They kind of didn't do anything in this movie.
No.
I feel like there was a lot more they were supposed to do. And I think I read somewhere that Tyrese Gibson actually had some action sequences that just we didn't see.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Phil in the chat says this might be Tyrese Gibson's best movie.
It might be. It actually might be.
What else has he done other than Fast and Furious?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
He almost did Green Lantern.
Really?
He was almost Jon Stewart, I think. Yeah. He's fine in this movie, but also he doesn't really do much.
He just kind of reads the lines.
Yeah. Oh, he is in the first 3 Transformers movies. That's right.
Oh, he's one of the soldiers. That's right.
Yeah, he hangs out with the main soldier character guy.
Josh Duhamel. You know what's crazy? I am very good at remembering names of people who we're not talking about.
But when we're actually talking about somebody, you're like, what the fuck's their name?
I blank out.
Who the fuck is Tyrese Gibson?
Yes. You know what it is? You know when you look at the sun and there's just like one specific blind spot in your vision for a little bit, like where the sun was?
Yes,
and
I try not to look at the sun, but...
Okay, but you know what I'm talking about? It happens in any light, you know? So like, if you're focusing on something, you can't see it, but if you're not, you can see everything else around it. That's me.
Okay.
Jonah Hill, yeah.
But yeah, like I just talked about like the comic accuracy and stuff. I mean, do you have anything to add spoilery?
Couple things
All
that I had problems with in the story that I think are not the script's fault. I think it's the editing's fault. Mm-hmm. The whole Milo thing.
That was a little weird.
Matt Smith's character, Lucian, who has, upon meeting, Morbius is like, yeah, you're Milo. And the reason you're Milo is because the last kid who's there was Milo. Actually, no.
The kid before that was Milo. Milo died a long time ago, but everybody who sits in that bed is Milo.
Right. Here's the thing. And then he spends the whole movie being called Milo.
And then the doctor calls him Milo.
That was funny. But it's not funny because it's funny. It's funny because why is the adult calling? Like, why are all the adults?
We're missing context.
We're missing a scene here. Yeah, exactly. If there was a scene where he was like, yeah, like my parents dropped me off here and they don't love me anymore because I'm diseased and I'm disabled, but they're not going to let me die either. So they're just throwing money at healing me, but like they don't want me back and fuck my name and fuck that. And this kid likes me and he calls me Milo and I want to be Milo now. That would have really worked.
This is my new identity now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because even at the end of the movie, he's like, you gave me my name.
Exactly.
So, like, and clearly he likes the name Milo. It was, like, endearing to him.
Well, that whole part at the end was a really good payoff to a setup that never happened.
Because we're missing it.
Again, a lot of this could have been...
This movie could have been saved in editing.
There could have been... Yes. There could have been a lot of themes here about, like, disabled people. And
sticking together.
And prejudices.
Yeah. Because like they even have their whole thing where like they say the Spartan saying. Because like they feel like it's like them against the world.
Exactly. That could have been something.
We were also missing context with that too, because he just said it randomly. But
everyone's seen 300. Yeah. Look, it really could have been something about able-bodied people versus disabled people, those perceptions, the nuances in our culture and how we see them, and like, because his whole motivation, Milo's, is that he is so sick of being disabled. And even though Morbius is like, yeah, I found a solution, but it's a solution where the side effects are worse than the disease.
He's like, I don't care. I want to be.
He's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't care about the ramifications. I am desperate for the solution to be able-bodied.
And that was a bit rushed because I feel like that could have been a lot more emotional.
That could have been so much more. And it just happens very quickly, and he kind of says that a couple times, and he just kind of is a bad guy, you know?
Yeah. Also, is it ever explained how Milo became like a millionaire? Like, why is he rich all of a sudden?
That's the other thing. No, it's not. And
he just is.
Right. My original assumption, which is also not in the movie, is that his parents are rich and just threw him away in this, in this place for him to get better with his blood disease.
And then
or
he
whatever.
like died and he inherited their money or something.
Maybe. Yeah. But again, context.
Yeah, like that's not told us in any way at all.
You know what would have also worked really well, I think, is if Morbius, well, I was going to say if Morbius were poor, but then he wouldn't be a doctor either.
That's true.
No, because Jared Harris's character, that guy, the doctor, he sends him off to like, doesn't he like?
He sends him off to a school for gifted youngsters. His wording for that school was weird because he's like, there's a school in New York for gifted young people. And like, that sounds like Charles Xavier's school.
But also, you're not actively trying to avoid that because he's not a mutant. So why did this happen?
I think it was just a weird choice of words.
And so anyway, a lot of room for thematics with Milo and just to make the characters a little bit better. The mercenaries, where the fuck did they come from?
Didn't he hire them?
I don't know.
I think he hired them to like...
Why?
I don't know.
So why are they mean to him then?
I think, maybe he like rented their boat. He's like renting space on their boat or something.
Okay, so it's kind of
he said like we need to go to like international waters. This isn't legal. Like
yeah, but they never introduced the mercenaries.
No, they're just there.
So it just cuts to there's guys with guns in this ship,
and they're rude,
and they're mean. Yeah, and then they just become cannon fodder. And I'm like, all we needed. Look, I completely get that you want Morbius to kill a bunch of people on the boat just to show off his powers and have an action scene. I buy that 100%. All you needed to do was say why these guys are here, so it's not weird when they just show up.
I assumed it was their ship, and he was like using it
but
for his experiments.
But why are you making the assumption is what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying?
Because the movie didn't tell me.
Exactly. Same thing with the Milo thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that. And like I said, there was conversations with the girl where like 1 minute they're in one place, the next they're in a different location having the same conversation or a similar one. Just like
it's just weird.
This was strange.
Yeah.
There were a lot of times when the movie also tries to kind of jazz up something. So like regular dialogue, they can't just have two characters in a room having dialogue. They have to be walking on a busy street and the camera is doing something. Or like, again, they cut from location to location. Or he has to be in the middle of fidgeting with medicine stuff. And
because
I'm like,
he's a doctor.
Right. And I'm like, does the director not have faith in the script? Like, if you write the dialogue well enough, your characters just have to stand there and give it.
Maybe the director didn't have faith in the script.
And that makes the performances better. You know what I mean? If they have the room to perform.
Right.
And all these actors are really good actors. Like, I don't know the woman. I don't know what she's done. But Matt Smith is great. Jared Leto's great. And Jared Harris, the doctor. All those three characters are great.
So, like, yeah, the three main characters of this
all the
movie.
Ones that are sharing important dialogue with each other, they could have been given more to say and do. And maybe they were. Maybe it was cut to shreds.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we don't know. But I just wanted them to do and say more things, not just like end conversation so quickly to get to the next scene.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like you said, that creates a breakneck pace because it's just the movie is moving too quickly and you want it to slow down.
There's no downtime. When they try to put downtime in it, like you said, it's like they're doing something while they're talking. So it's it's not downtime.
No. They're doing two things at once.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
All that being said, I want to talk about the story. I think this movie lacks an identity, and I think that might be a lot of what the critics kind of like hone in on. Like, you can't look at this movie and be like, oh, well, it's this kind of movie. It's just kind of a generic movie. You know what I mean?
Because I wouldn't call it an action movie. I wouldn't call it a horror movie. Like, it's not a thriller.
Can we agree it should have been a horror movie?
I think it would have been a lot better if it was. Or at least more exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. I'm not sure if it would have gotten away with a PG-13. Well, they make PG-13 horror movies.
Most horror movies are PG-13.
I feel like a lot are.
I think now a lot are, but like in the early 2000s, most of them are PG because they want to get as many people in the theater as they could to see their low-budget horror movie.
That's true.
Yeah. Slasher movies usually are.
I get the feeling that someone here wanted to make a horror movie for a minute because there's that one scene in the middle of the movie.
In the hallway?
Yeah. That
was good.
Starts being a horror, but because it is so far removed from the context of a horror movie, it doesn't work for me. I was like, what are we doing here?
I think the scene on its own was good, though.
Okay, I'll give you that. Here's the other thing about that scene. It doesn't work as a plot point either. Because a lot of this movie is predicated on us believing that Morbius killed that lady in the hallway.
Right.
And at the end, it's revealed that Milo did it. Yeah. But I was just very confused all the time. Because if I didn't necessarily like. I assumed Morbius did it, but I was also kind of like.
Also, like Morbius was like in a room with a patient, like he was like passed out,
and he thinks he may have done it, but like I don't know. The context was weird. I'm like, did Milo get there? I don't remember why I was confused. But anyway, it just doesn't seem obvious that Morbius would have done it. But then if it's obvious that Morbius didn't do it, then it's obvious that Milo did. So
right, because there's only 2 vampires right now.
Exactly. So it's not a surprise either way. And I
think that scene happened before we found out Milo was a vampire, though. Because it's before he gets arrested.
But if we knew for a fact that it wasn't Morbius, I think it would have worked better, maybe.
Because then you'd have been like, oh, who the fuck was that?
Yeah. Like,
and then you find out Milo did it.
Yeah.
And then you're like...
What if there's another vampire all along? We don't know it's Milo until later in the movie, maybe. We only see him as a vampire. It maybe becomes more of a horror style. It would look more like a vampire or like a werewolf movie where you've got you got a monster on the loose. You got to track it down.
Yeah.
Also, I think this movie is trying too hard to make Morbius the good guy, and he can't get his hands dirty. So he does kill those mercenaries. That's fine, because no one gives a shit about those people. Even the fucking police.
Even the police said that to him.
They're like, we don't give a shit about them. I don't care. It's the lady we're upset about. But it would have been more interesting and at least more of a horror movie, kind of like a werewolf movie style, where he is turning into the vampire and hurting people and then in regret when he's done.
That sounds like the comic book character of Morbius.
Like you do like an American Werewolf.
This movie toys with that, but it doesn't quite go all the way.
But that would have made it more... That makes it more of a thing.
Yeah.
Like, that makes it this kind of movie. And it would know what it wanted to be, and it would do it.
Yeah.
If it had just stuck to an idea. Instead of just being like, no, he's a hero. We're going to just tell the audience that he's a hero, I guess.
And I think that's the problem with Sony just trying to make all these villain standalone movies. It's like... Well, you have to make them the protagonist.
Well, yeah, but you don't have to make them good.
No, but I feel like Sony thinks you do.
I don't know. You can make them. You can make a movie.
Are we going to get a Craven movie where he's like a victim of like something?
No, he's a bad guy.
Craven's bad. He has his moments, but like he's mostly bad.
Yeah. I mean, same with all these other guys. Like, and even Venom. Like, yeah, he's become more empathetic recently. But
yeah,
even so, he's still kind of
the Venom movie. I think. Him being an anti-hero the whole time, I think that works. I think that just needed to be done better.
Okay.
This would have benefited from Morbius being a bit more like, keep his morality, like he wants to do good and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But have also him be an actual threat to people.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Actors we talked about, I think they all do very well, actually.
Yeah,
I think
everybody puts up a pretty good performance. And
I wish Jared Leto had more... Like, again, the movie's kind of short, and he kind of just says the necessary dialogue to move the plot.
Right.
But there aren't a whole lot of character moments with him. There are a few.
There's a couple with him and Milo.
Yeah, and there's a couple with him and the girl. I forget her name.
Martine.
Okay.
She's in the comics.
Oh, cool. And I think those are good. I just wanted a little bit more of them. Like, again, they weren't dramatic enough for me. But I think he does fine. I love that he doesn't have to shave or cut his hair. He's just like...
No, it's just, hey, I'm just showing up on set.
He's just like, no, you actually kind of already look like a vampire, so this is actually going to work out great. In the comics, he's like kind of hideous. His diseases makes him like ugly and sickly looking.
Yeah.
Obviously, Jared Leto is very handsome, but...
They make him look hideous when he transforms. Like, they do that Morbius look.
He's a little sickly, yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, before.
Oh, yeah, he's sickly
skinny,
at the beginning, yeah. Yeah, he's like walking around. He needs like assistance walking with the... What are those called? They're not crutches. They're...
I think they're... I don't know. They're crutches. They're like solo crutches.
Are they?
No, because they're...
Because they go around your arm. They don't go under your...
It's like a cane and a crutch
put together.
It's something between there.
I don't know what they're called. Please excuse my ignorance on medical things.
So cinematography, it is boring and it is plain. I don't think it's horrible either. That's the other thing. I really like the aesthetic of the credits, opening and closing. It's all very neon.
It looks very comic book like.
I was like, this is something different. Here's something that's actually different that stands alone. And that aesthetic should have been more present in the marketing, I think, and it wasn't. All the posters look like generic superhero posters.
I don't think marketing was on the same page as anybody else with this movie. Because the director also recently said, you remember in the trailer, the Spider-Man mural?
Yeah.
The director doesn't know anything about that.
All that was... That
the director's like, I don't know why that was there.
They're just pushing that like, hey, this is a Spider-Man villain.
Which is probably why a lot of stuff from the trailer got cut from the movie, because it was never in the movie.
Right. The action, a lot of it is, it's okay. But let me tell you, there was a part of the movie that I had a smile on my face. I'm like, I'm having fun with this. Like, this is fun.
Which part?
When he was in the subway and he fights those guys. That was pretty good. And then he just he flies in the subway behind the train, and then
because of the air currents from the train and stuff.
I was like, this is cool.
It was pretty cool.
Gonna tell you.
Matt Smith does that weird dance.
That's good too. Some of the effects with like the whole echolocation thing are very generic. Like we've seen it a million times, but at the same time, it's like, well, he's kind of a bat. And it kind of makes sense. Yeah. And in the context of the film, I'm fine with it and I liked it. Even other kind of generic tropes like him, giving the exposition by talking into a recorder.
Like he's a doctor and he's conducting experiments. It makes sense.
It makes sense, and it worked in the movie. Things I thought I was going to hate, I'm like, you know what? This works. So
no, there was some clever stuff here.
Yeah. Like I said, I had fun with it. Even the action. I had fun with the action. And the ending, it did get a little samey and boring, but they almost had something there.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the post-credits.
Oh, yeah. So this might be my least favorite part of the movie is the post-credit scenes, which is funny because usually that's the most exciting part of these movies.
It's the most exciting part of these movies when the movies are working very well together.
Yes.
And this is not one of those situations.
This was very forced.
Yes. So like in, Marvel, they really got all their shit together. They've got 4 movies a year coming out. They're all perfectly interconnected. Mm-hmm. So the post-credits make sense. But when you just kind of like throw shit at a wall and see what smells the worst, like what's going on here? Because I have a lot of questions.
I have a lot to pick apart.
Why are there multiple scenes? They accomplished the same thing, basically. It should have just been one scene.
Yeah.
Because the first scene is just, Adrian Toomes just showed up. We don't know where he came from.
We're going to let him out of jail.
And yeah, and I guess he's getting out of jail.
First off, he doesn't seem that concerned that he, is somewhere different now, away from his wife and child. He's just like, well, hope the food's here is better.
Yeah, that should have been more of the thing. Like, I've been robbed from my family.
Yeah.
Because family is everything to me.
Yeah.
Spider-Man.
He should be upset at Spider-Man because of that, but he's not. He's just like, well, this is weird. All right.
I guess I got to make new friends here.
And then, why did he move to this universe? Because, all right, the director has already confirmed before the movie came out that this takes place in the same universe as Venom.
Oh, right.
And there are direct references to Venom in the movie. So, yeah, this is in the SSU, the Venomverse. Uh-huh. We don't know who the Spider-Man in this universe is.
Is there a Spider-Man in this universe?
The director said there is.
Cool, that's just a word he said.
Well, and the writers also said that there's a Spider-Man in every universe because there's a spider totem in every universe. They're calling back to the comics, but also I feel like they're trying to tease the whole Madam Web thing.
Okay. But Venom doesn't know who Spider-Man is when he sees him on the TV. He's just like, who's this guy?
Right, which is why I'm curious as to how they're going to do that. Probably in a very messy way.
Sure. Okay, so again, both scenes pretty much accomplished the same thing. They didn't have to be 2 scenes. It was weird that they got split up. How did he get here? Because he's not from this universe. And
right.
All of the people at the end of No Way Home ended up back in their correct universes. So why would this one random guy from the MCU just end up in the SSU? Other than obviously we want Michael Keaton to be in our shitty movies.
That might be the only reason, because that directly breaks the rules set up in No Way Home.
Exactly. Because even fucking Venom, Eddie Brock, who came in from another universe...
went back.
Went back after he learned everything about the new universe.
Which is kind of funny, and maybe they'll potentially use that.
Okay, I have more questions. What's the point of assembling a Sinister Six in this universe?
Sony has a hard-on to do it.
But we just did it.
We had a Sinister Five.
But what's the difference other than having the name?
A Fearsome Five.
But other than being able to say oh, this is the Sinister Six.
I think it's...
What's the difference?
I think Avi Arad really wants to do it, and that's it.
But in No Way Home, we sort of did it.
But not officially.
Okay, but who cares?
I don't know. Sony's been on this thing since the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2.
And I thought No Way Home was the concession. I thought that was both Marvel and Sony going like, okay, you want a super villain team up? We'll do it.
You finally got it.
And this is how we did it, and it was amazing.
Yeah, everybody loved it. We made a lot of money. We're one of the highest grossing films of all time.
So why now go, okay, but what if we did that same thing,
but
with
worse?
6? But worse.
And here's the other thing. How did he get a new Vulture suit? Because he used Chitauri technology to make his suit in the MCU.
And it didn't transport with him, did it?
That's why I think if this is a big if this is Andrew Garfield's universe, maybe he went to Oscorp and got his starter kit.
Okay, but that's a huge if. Okay, so like...
Because it doesn't make sense that he has all this technology again.
No, because you don't transport with all your technology. You transport with whatever the fuck you were wearing.
And he was in prison.
Because...
Also, where's the Scorpion? Where's Matt Gargan?
He's in the MCU, though.
I hope we see him.
Did they both transport together?
I just want to see him in a movie. I want to see a live-action Scorpion villain.
Okay, so I was saying, Green Goblin... He showed up with his Green Goblin stuff because he had it on him.
Right.
Right. Doc Ock transported with his stuff because he had it on him in the moment before they died. Right.
Right.
What's his face? Mephisto. Electro showed up butt-ass naked because he had turned into pure energy.
And then died.
So that's why he's naked. So why did he get transported with his... Vulture suit that he doesn't have on him?
But he didn't get transferred with the Vulture suit because we saw him get transferred. Also, the Vulture suit looked slightly different from his Homecoming one.
I think it's just bad animators.
Oh.
I didn't put too much thought into it.
The helmet looked a little different.
Yeah, I didn't put too much thought into it. Yeah, don't like any of that.
No, and like now we're speculating on something that doesn't make any sense.
There's just no way they're going to put a Sinister Six together and we're going to be like,
This is great.
This is great because it is technically the same number of villains I want. Because here's the thing. You could have made a Sinister Six in No Way Home and they said, look, story-wise, it'd be over cramming it. There's nothing wrong with 5 because they're not actually going to give themselves a name. They're just together on happenstance.
Yeah.
And that's a story reason, and it's great to not go against what logically makes sense in the story.
Yeah.
So I don't see
also,
why
the
this would...
Sinister Six isn't that big a deal in the Spider-Man comics.
No. They, like, for the most part, they all work independently of each other.
Yeah, they have a couple of team-ups. That's it. Like...
So,
the Spider-Man game did the Sinister Six really well.
Yeah. Again, it also had all the time to do it. It's longer. And
video games have a lot more time to tell a story than a movie does. That's true.
Well, let's wrap this up then. I forgot to mention like costume. He doesn't get a costume. He's just kind of like whatever he's wearing.
He just looks like Morbius.
But he does again. He looks like Morbius.
They
I like
took
the
this
look.
guy on my shirt and they put him on screen.
That's exactly what they did. The design is very good, I think.
Yes.
Also, the effects. I was surprised with how good the effects were. I was expecting them to be bad.
Well, because everybody's saying they're bad.
They're not. They're fine.
They're totally.
His transformation from back and forth looked really good.
Yeah.
And whatever real body is Jared Leto's, whether it's the muscular one, it is the muscular one because he has shirtless pictures all over Instagram.
Yeah, it's the muscular
one.
When
he's the skinny one, it looks good.
It looks better than Captain America First Avenger.
Yeah, it really does.
Well, also, that movie came out like 10 years ago, so.
Also, they put him on a tiny frame, so his head's a weird size and the chins don't line
Chris
up.
Evans has a big head.
Yeah. So anyway, I question a lot of his costumes he's wearing. Like he wears a lot of hoodies.
Is he just trying to be like inconspicuous?
Yeah, but it's also like you're a doctor. Like it's weird that he goes into the hospital with a hoodie on.
That's a little weird. It's a little weird.
Stuff like that.
But like when he's Morbius, he looks good. And I mean Milo, I don't think Milo's a real character from the comics. He's original for this movie.
He's original for this movie. He was supposed to be Hanger, some other character.
Oh.
If you wanted to do the deep V look, he could have been wearing a suit and then the shirt just rips off and he just has like the...
They could have done that.
They could have done something.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Something that makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah. Anyway, final thoughts.
I think this movie's fine. I think it's worth at least one watch. Like, it's overall, like, I guess you could say it's like mediocre, but to say it's like horrible or like just bad, I don't think that's accurate.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it's mediocre.
But it's like, it's not a bad time either.
No. I had fun with it. I quite enjoyed it. It is, it's something I would definitely watch again, kind of absentmindedly.
Yeah. Like, I'm not going to put a bunch of thought into it or anything, but I would watch it again.
It really could have been something. Okay, here's something I'll give it. Going in and, because Sony is making their own side universe that is tangentially related to the MCU, but really they're just kind of like pulling down the potential of what the MCU and Spider-Man could be. Yeah. Again, like, will we ever see Venom and Spider-Man go up toe to toe? Who knows?
I wonder what Kevin Feige thinks of this movie.
Who knows? So going in, I'm like, these movies shouldn't happen. They just should not exist. I was convinced that, no, you have something here. Story-wise, I like this character. I think there is a lot to explore that they just didn't explore, like thematically. This could have been like a disabled story for this guy. And
yeah.
You could have done a horror movie. Could have been like a classic werewolf story where he can't control his outburst and he's hurting people, and that's what really he wants to stop. You could have done any of those things.
There's so much potential with this character.
Yeah, and I was thoroughly convinced of all the potential watching this movie. Then again, I was convinced of that by being reminded of what it isn't. I kept on watching it and going like, well, this could have been something, but it
could have been so much more, but it kind of falls short.
Yeah. Look, I'm not necessarily calling for another Morbius movie.
I am.
Okay, cool. And maybe that one can be a horror. Maybe they can do a better sequel. Maybe it's like the Wolverine movies. They each got better.
Until eventually we had a good one.
Yeah. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is I would like to see more of this character. I think in lieu of not getting more Jared Leto as Joker, maybe Jared Leto as Morbius. But you have to treat him right.
If we're stuck with this SSU, use what you've got going for you so far, and you do have potential with this character of Morbius. Even if this movie isn't what it could have been, the character does have the potential to be something very interesting.
I would love to see, and I'm not sure if they can ever do it, this Morbius interact with Spider-Man. I would love for him to interact with Blade. I doubt we'll see that, but
that'd be cool.
Definitely not, because this movie has gone out of its way to explain that this universe is standalone.
But also they brought an element from the MCU directly into it by force, so who knows?
Yeah, but I'd be okay with seeing him in other contexts,
I would too.
But anyway, that's it for us, guys. Ringing endorsements all around.
Yeah, if you don't like our opinion, sorry, this might be the most positive review you hear on the movie.
Maybe, actually. All right, thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Thanks to that piano dude for our musical intro. Make sure you guys leave a rating and review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Please tell a friend, and thank you so much for telling a friend. You can find us on Instagram at Films from the Phantom Zone. You can find us at Twitter at Films from PZ. You can find us on TikTok at Films from PZ. All these episodes are available on YouTube if that's how you like getting your podcast on a browser window. We have a second podcast called Where's Mephisto, where we watch streaming television and we look for Mephisto because he's got to be somewhere.
It's a very loose concept that allows us to just talk about current TV shows.
Correct. So we've done half of Peacemaker, and now we are reviewing Moon Knight weekly.
Yes.
So that comes out on Tuesdays only on our Patreon. So it's Patreon exclusive. It's how we can be supported if you want to support the show. We live stream all these recordings, all these episodes on Twitch. It's twitch.tv/filmsfrompz on Monday nights. We have people here in the chat. We had Jorge and Philly here hanging out with us. If you want to talk to us, be a part of the show while we record the live thing, you can do that on Twitch Monday nights again at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And then also, if you want to talk to us throughout the week, we can hang out on our Discord server where we hang out and talk to people all week long.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
A lot of memes.
Yeah, there's memes. We talk about news, all kinds of stuff. So if you want to hang out with us there in our community, there's a link below for our Discord server. Other than that, we will see you next week and with the next review and next movie.
Which?
Oblivion. It'll be Oblivion.
Oh, okay. I was like...
this should come out... would make sense that this comes out first. Then Oblivion. Then probably Doctor Strange.
Oh, yeah.
The movie, not the review. And then the review.
Yes. Doctor Strange, the movie. Yeah. And then Doctor... whatever.
Mordred. I don't know if that's going to be... I don't know if we'll get that all out on time. It'll probably be after the movie comes out.
Okay.
We're several movies into it now, so...
Yeah. There's a lot going on.
Yes. Thanks again, and goodbye.
Bye.